Good morning. Welcome to a new day here from a soft spring morning in London. Nice to see you all arriving and greeting the Sangha. So as usual, the invitation to settle into yourselves and also to reach out to sense into this shared space once you've placed your name into the space. I feel that makes a difference. Just writing something in the chat, it's like placing our energy into this shared field. And then feeling into the field. In whatever way that arises for you, whatever way, if you're visual, there might be some visual sense of this field beyond space and time, of awakening bodies, hearts and minds. The heart flames growing a little brighter each day, each day, each day. Even when we don't believe that, sometimes it's helpful to look back and really reflect, wow, I would do things differently now. To look back and recognize how much we've been supported by others, and to appreciate perhaps we support others in the same way. We don't necessarily know, we often don't know how profoundly we support others, and we also certainly don't know the ripples through time and space of the way in which we might have held one person that can then extend out from that person infinitely. So just that appreciation of what Sangha really means to you, the mystery of it, the depth and profundity of the ways in which we hold and guide and celebrate and challenge each other. All of which are mirrors to us for love's flavors and flow, which we've been exploring together and continue to explore this week. And so over the last few days, we've been feeling into how love radiates a luminous warmth, how love effortlessly flows to rest beside pain with great tenderness, how love expands with delight in the presence of joy. And I hope you've been feeling in our meditations, and perhaps through your day as well, the way in which when we orientate ourselves towards how love feels and how it moves in any particular moment, there's a sense of space around that moment. Because our tendency is to contract that space. Our tendency is to focus in on the objects in space, on the experiences, and then our relationship to those experiences. It's the very nature of contraction and collapse. But another way that love shows up is in love's spaciousness. In the very sense that there's room for this. There's so much room for this. All of this is just another way that love flows. To meet pain, to meet joy just in its expansion and warmth. The objects of the space are simply objects in that space of love. They're like waves in an ocean. And so the more we widen our attention to experience the way love holds this infinite embrace of space, the more we are, the more spacious life itself becomes. The more room we have for the inevitable joys and challenges of life. And the more room as well we have to be adaptable and flexible within those joys and challenges, within the inevitable changes of life. The more room, the more space we feel for other people's very different ways that they perceive and experience reality. It's actually a very subjective thing, reality. It's very personal, the way we experience life. And so the more room, the more space we have around our own perceptions, taking them less seriously, holding on to them less tightly. The more room, the more space we have for other people. The more curiosity we can have towards the way love feels and flows, rather than the objects with which it meets, the objects that love is meeting. So just like the ocean doesn't contract or collapse around its waves, trying to manage and control the waves that it likes and get rid of somehow, remove the waves it doesn't like. It's an exhausting and impossible exercise. In the same way, we expend so much energy and diminish our life force in our attempts to manage and control our lives in this way, in our attempts to manage and control by holding on to the things that we think we like, by at the same time, as we explored yesterday, even there contracting around our response to delight and managing that too. We manage and control life by pushing away the things that we don't like and numb or fix or distract from experiencing the challenge of that, rather than witnessing the sweetness of love's tenderness. And so there tends to be a hardening of our experience of being alive, a shrinking of what we feel needs to be in place in order for things to be okay. We often call that anxiety. So we'll be exploring today in our meditation the way it feels to rest in the space. And in that space, how much room there is to witness and participate in love's graceful dance. The luminous warmth, the tenderness, the delight. The way love just flows between its infinite spectrum of response to whatever is arising moment to moment, and how much room there is for this. And you might have recognized, those of you who are familiar with Dharma, that what we've been exploring over these days using different words, the Brahma Viharas, so metta is what I've translated as or reinterpreted as love's luminous warmth. Karuna as love's tenderness. Mudita as love's delight. And love's spaciousness is upekkha, which is usually translated as equanimity. So just a widening of that understanding around equanimity, because I find that it can sometimes be interpreted in a way that is also quite constrictive, as if I must be equanimous means the must be is already constrictive, but even equanimity meaning somehow as if we're aspiring towards a flat line of experience, not being overly moved by this, just staying steady. As one friend said to me once, her teacher would always tell her just to stay in the belly, as a way of perhaps not feeling what was happening here in the heart, and as a way of bypassing the discriminating wisdom of her mind at times. Of course, staying in the belly is a profound practice, which we've also been practicing when it's understood in that wider context of anchoring our attention in a grounded, embodied presence. But as I also said, one of these days, any practice is a tool which, when there's something unconscious within it, it can be used in a way to support ourselves to continue to not see as much as it can support us to illuminate and liberate. So yeah, just this invitation for an understanding of equanimity to be an exhale, a spaciousness, an ease, a sense of there being room for this, nothing to be afraid of, nothing to be afraid of in life. You don't need to be afraid of fear. Fear can be met with great tenderness and groundedness. Fear can be supported by drawing on all the different ways that we feel connected and held in life, connected to this earth, connected to each other, connected to our breath, connected to spirit perhaps. Nothing to be afraid of, nothing to resist, nothing to hold on to, nothing to manage and control, even though at the same time, of course, there are things that we need to put in place in life. There are things that are managed in our everyday life. So there's always apparent contradictions in this languaging. But what I'm referring to here is the movement of our own internal space, the movement of the heart and mind to try and manage and control our relationship to this moment, when instead the invitation is for our relationship to this moment to become expansive and spacious and wide. Because there's room for this. There's room to celebrate, to participate in, to just rest in the wonder and awe of love's flavors and flow. One of the ways that we've been supporting our ability to feel love in its different forms, different flavors and flow over this week is with a little bit of attention to breathing. So each day I've been offering a few hopefully very simple breathing exercises. If you found it helpful, wonderful. If you haven't found it helpful, please just let it go. So today, well, over these days as well, I've been hoping to, I hope that I've been sharing that the act of breathing is one of the body's breathing muscles creating space when we breathe in. I was speaking yesterday of the ribs and diaphragm expanding, widening in that more horizontal direction to literally create more space. As the diaphragm flattens down, it also widens, and the back muscles and the rib muscles engage to widen the ribs, the chest, the whole of the chest in all its circumference, so that there's literally more space around the lungs, so that air is received. We receive the breath. We don't grab the breath. We don't even take a breath. We receive the breath as we create more space. And I was speaking as well on each day, I think, about how when we breathe out, the diaphragm relaxes back into its dome shape, but a lengthened exhalation is also supported by slightly drawing the lower belly below the navel back towards the spine, just to help the organs come back towards the spine so that the diaphragm is relaxed into its dome shape. So we offer that breath out. We receive the inhalation, we offer our out breath out by creating less space in the lungs. Today, we'll be exploring those movements again, but just with a little more attention on the spaces in between the breath, on that pause. The pause at the end of the exhalation, the pause at the top of the inhalation. And again, those pauses we don't hold those pauses by contracting. We don't grip the throat. We don't hold anything. We simply pause the breathing muscles just as they are. So at the end of the exhalation, it's just a pause of holding the breathing muscles just as they are, so that there's a stillness in the breathing body. And in that stillness, which can just be a few moments, I'll be inviting you to widen your attention into that space. And the same at the top of the inhalation. We don't hold, there's no gripping in the throat or anywhere in the body. It's just a holding of the breathing muscles just as they are, the chest cavity wide, the diaphragm flat and wide. And then a gentle pausing, a few beats into that space where our attention can widen into the space, as if entering a room and looking around. The space at the top of the inhale. Once again, letting any of this go, particularly if you find it actually creates more tension, let it go, let it go. So let's begin our practice today. Finding a comfortable seat, lying down or seated, where your base can be broad. You can take a sigh out through your mouth. You can squeeze and stretch the skin and muscles of your face. You can use your hands to massage anywhere on the face, or the head, or the shoulders, or the neck. Yawn, stick out the tongue. Take a sigh. Do whatever needs to be done to bring your attention gently into a grounded, awake, open, relaxed, and spacious body. With your spine very long, your face, especially your mouth, tongue, jaw, lips, and your eyes, very soft. I invite you to take your attention to your exhalation. And if you choose to, taking a few, one or two slightly longer exhalations, imagining, if it's helpful for you, that the exhalation begins at the brain and you breathe down, all the way down to the lower belly by drawing the lower belly muscles slowly back towards the spine. And as you breathe down, the spine actually lengthens. And when you breathe in, the belly completely relaxes. So each time you breathe out, it's as if the brain itself relaxes away from the skull. Your attention moves down into the lower belly, into the ground. The spine grows longer even as you breathe out. When you breathe in, the belly relaxes. So you really experience the relaxation of the abdomen. Taking a few normal breaths now with your attention centered in the lower belly. Feeling its soft expansion with your inhalation. Gentle toning with your exhalation. Your body grounded and here. And then if you choose to, you could explore a few slightly longer inhalations. As if the inhale begins at the lower belly. And then as it rises up, begin to widen the diaphragm, widen the chest muscles, widen as if you're breathing in horizontally. So the face stays soft, but the chest becomes wider in all directions. And as you breathe out, don't just drop that widening. Let it be slow, slow, enjoying the space in the heart. No strain. Definitely not going to your maximum with any of these breaths, just slightly lengthening. A normal inhalation to feel the space, this luminous warmth in the heart. And then with some normal breaths, placing your attention in the heart space. And as if your inhalations have been fanning the flame of this luminous warmth in your heart. And then if you choose to, we'll just do one or perhaps two slightly longer exhalations with just a widening of the pause at the end of the exhale, followed by slightly longer inhale. Gentle pause at the end of the inhale. So again, you could feel like you're exhaling from the brain, feeling the spine grow taller even as you draw the lower belly back, and then just holding the breathing muscles just as they are. And when you're ready to breathe in, let's actually just take 1 or 2 normal breaths after that exhale. So we'll separate the 2 breaths. Feeling the wide space around experience. And when you're ready to explore the pause at the top of a slightly longer inhalation, again, imagine that you're breathing in from the lower belly and then widening as if in a horizontal inhalation, not taking a maximum breath, but then just holding these breathing muscles wide. No tension, no gripping in the throat. And as if you're just looking around the wide space at the pause for a few beats at the top of this inhalation before you gently release the breathing muscles and gently let the out-breath come out. Simply feeling your breathing now, wherever you feel it in your body. Soft, natural breaths. And just as you might have felt the space, the infinite space inside your body, sense as well now the infinite space extending out in front of you. The infinite space full of objects and yet surrounded by space. And sense the infinite space extending out behind you. A space that is filled with love's luminous warmth. And sense the infinite space extending out to the sides of you. Filled with love's luminous warmth. And sense the infinite space extending out above and below you. Palpable and alive with love's luminous warmth. And sense the infinite space extending within you. palpable and alive with love's luminous warmth. Responsive and flowing in each moment to rest beside pain with tenderness. To expand into beauty and aliveness and pleasure with delight. Nothing to hold on to, nothing to push away. Love's already here, flowing through infinite space with grace. Objects move through space, experiences arise, and love simply responds. Relax into the space. Let yourself be held by it, guided by it, enlivened by it. resting into it. Notice how delight and tenderness rest side by side in this space. How life's complexity is effortlessly embraced. There's room for this. There's room even for contradiction in infinite space. And breathing, arising and dissolving within infinite space. Experiences arising and dissolving from and back into infinite space. A space alive and palpable with love's luminous warmth. Flowing effortlessly into tenderness and delight. A space alive with love. This poem is called Feathers into Empty Space. There is no loss, only change. The things I thought would stay forever were already transforming, slipping through my fingers even as I held on to a dream that never was. And the things I know are here to grow keep asking me to stay, but step back and further back as they learn to breathe on their own. So much I believed would die remains until a sweet surrender lets them go, falling like feathers into empty space. While the future is always already here, waiting to be woven by hands no longer fretting and fussing with holding on and pushing away. No part of this mystery has ever been mine to keep. Thank you, friends, for your practice and your presence, for being here and showing up in this shared field to explore spaciousness, love's spaciousness together. Thank you, Faith. Faith just wrote, I hope you'll publish a collection of your beautiful poems at some point. Most of these poems I've read out are included in the book that I am just finishing, which I might show to somebody at some point. Faith has been encouraging me with this. So this is a time for questions if you have any. Thank you for your sweet messages. And a reminder, of course, as usual, that your dana is enormously appreciated by both Sangalive and me. So thank you for your sharing, your participation in Love's Flow. It's a beautiful thing to do together. The link for Dana, I'll just post it here. As usual, I'll share the poem with George, who'll connect it to the recording when it shows up at the end of the day. So do let me know if you have any questions, but it might also be that we rest together in space. I would really invite you to now but ongoing, to continue to be very curious about the embodied experience of these different flavors of love that we are exploring together. To really keep sensing into, even right now, as just after our practice this morning, to sense into how spaciousness feels. Because our minds can be very quick to get excited about something and to give it names and definitions and then create connections. It's beautiful. It's what the mind does. But the way there's a way in which the mind can actually keep a sense of separation if that's the only place we inhabit. So by coming back again and again into the felt sense of, oh, spaciousness feels like this. Delight feels like this. Tenderness feels like this. Luminous warmth feels like this. It brings us much closer to the embodied experience of love and to the deepening realization that it's here. It takes a while for that to land because it's so enormous in its implications. It's not just a pretty idea that love is who we are. Love is the very fabric of existence. It is a pretty idea, but it can remain a pretty idea until we start to experience It's how it feels and how it moves right here inside us. It's such a mystery that, and yet, as I wrote in the poem, no part of this mystery has ever been mine to keep. And just to surrender into the mystery, and into even that mystery, that it's both right here in this body, mind, and heart, and yet not mine. What an extraordinary blessing to be able to be conscious and aware within this infinite space of love as it shows up like this and shows up like this. What an extraordinary blessing to have the opportunity to grow into an ever deepening embodiment of being love here in this human form. What a mystery, what a blessing. And what an extraordinary blessing to be able to play with that. Life is both a classroom and a playground to discover our own unique creative responses. How does love move through this being in this moment? How is love expressed creatively in this being in this moment? What a gift. And Joss shared a reflection. Seems like the spaciousness dissolves problems that might otherwise be questions. It's interesting that, isn't it? Jane asked if I could read the poem again if there are no questions. Yeah, with pleasure. I will do that, but just to rest as well for a moment longer with this. We have a question from Hilary. But before I come to you, Hilary, just that to rest a little longer with your reflection, Josh, on even our relationship to the questions we have in our life, and where sometimes just resting inside the space, the love which holds them, the answer comes forward, the resolution comes forward. Hilary's question is, I live in a community which has been fractured and broken by a narcissist. Every day it feels as if space is shrinking around the friction and drama he creates. I can easily become angry and exhausted. Your thoughts, Ayala? I just feel your pain, Hilary. So, there are many aspects, of course. There are many aspects and many ways to respond to what you've just described. It feels like a helpful place to start is that even when we allow the mind to, let's say, I'll use the word contract because I've been using that word over this week. When we allow the mind to contract around a definition like a narcissist, it can already separate from our involvement and also from the human behind those narcissistic behaviors. And it makes something fixed and solid, which, we've learned from the Dharma is always unhelpful. Whenever we try to make this the truth of reality, which is an ongoing flux and flow of change and non-meanness inside infinite space, into something fixed and solid, which is what our mind does, it's what our ego identity needs to do. It's an understandable thing. When we do that, there's kind of nowhere to go with that. There is a narcissist, and I'm here, and and that at the same time, I absolutely appreciate the challenge of living in close proximity with narcissistic tendencies in another person. And in my experience, I've found that I've become entangled in those narcissistic tendencies in another when I have also adopted a stance of the enabler. It often comes together that kind of empathic enablers support the tendency towards being an empathic enabler supports the tendency towards narcissistic behaviors. I'm hoping that makes some sense. So for a start, that helps me see that it helps me see the patterns of behavior more clearly in both me and the other person. And in doing so, it helps me practice as I've been offering the practice this week as one of pausing from whatever behaviors are the automatic tendencies, coming into the body, breathing, unhooking from the story, reaching out for other forms of support that helps me stay connected to this field of love, and feeling what's here in me, feeling the emotions that are fueling my own ongoing participation. It might be you've come to a place where you really don't, or perhaps you don't have any of those. You're not participant in the dance at all. Just is that this person exists in your community, in which case there is just the challenge of proximity. But in my experience, when there is no longer an emotional engagement in places that I am unconsciously, emotionally being triggered to react in certain ways and to continue to engage in a dance, it's a lot easier just to create boundaries. It's easier just to be clear that there's a boundary in how the other person is wanting to engage with me, but there's also, it's easier to actually be compassionate and to see with boundaries where that person is often very filled with shame, and where there's already a boundary there, and so I'm no longer vulnerable to that person's, let's call it violence in some form. Narcissistic behaviors are violent in their expression. It's not necessarily physical. Where I'm no longer vulnerable to that violence, having created some boundaries where that's possible, then there's a different way that through an ever deeper recognition of the humanity in myself and in other people and the ways that we contract and contort around behaviors, there can be a healthier relationship that unfolds. Most often, especially if the narcissistic behaviors are extreme, it may be that you need to remove yourself from that situation. And I don't know whether or not that's possible. Hillary, for the, when it's your community. But it needs to be an option to consider. People stay entangled in these relationships for years and years and years because there is something else that they don't want to lose. But when there's entanglement, we need to create a healthy boundary one way or another in order to release and disentangle, in order to begin to learn again where we are participant in that dance. Okay, friends, I hope that's helpful. As always, feel free to email me also. You can look on my website to find my email. It's ayalagill@gmail.com. And also, as Faith kindly mentioned, I forgot to say, I have a newsletter that is on Substack, which you can connect to either through Substack or through my website, which is ayalagill.com. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow, and I invite you through the day to continue to feel into the room for all of this space around experience. Continue to feel into the way in which we experience love move in that space. And to really feel that in an embodied way. How does it feel in your body? How does it show up in your body? What does this feel like? Familiarize ourselves with the way love feels and the way love moves. Sending you love. Until tomorrow.